What's going on, Rays fans? Rachel West here along with Mark Topkin. And Mark, could have been doing this little chat with you in New York, getting ready for the ALDS. Obviously not the case. We're here in St. Pete at the Trop. Obviously a disappointing end to the season for the Rays. What went wrong?
What went wrong, Rachel, if you really want to oversimplify it, is they didn't have enough hitting to offset Cleveland's pitching. I mean, ultimately, that's what led to them being eliminated in 2 games. I mean, you think about it, they played 24 innings and they lost 3-1 composite score. So it was very close. It could have changed literally on any one pitch if Cleveland hits a 1-run homer instead of a 2-run homer. I mean, so many different things that could have happened. But ultimately, offense was inconsistent all year. Offense was inconsistent, or even if that might even be positive way to spin it, in the 2 games against Cleveland. So that's what did the Rays in. A lot that they did to get to that point. They overcame a lot of injuries. They dealt with a lot of adversity during the year. They remade the roster at one point in several positions right around the trade deadline. So they did a lot of good to get to the postseason, but obviously a disappointing ending for the 2nd straight year.
And as you said, a lot went on throughout the course of the season, even before the playoffs. We're here at the Trapper. We just talked with Kevin Cash, Eric Neander, kind of looking forward and how things are going to play out in this offseason. So what are your takeaways from that?
Well, first of all, there's always going to be change for the Rays. There always is. They've never had a season where they stand pat. And I'm not talking about just peripheral or on the fringe. Every team makes those changes. But usually there's a key player or two that get traded or moved on at some point, and I think that'll be the case this year. There's only a handful of free agents. I don't think we'll see Corey Kluber or David Peralta back. Mike Zunino and Kevin Kiermaier, maybe, but it would seem unlikely. So it'll be kind of trading from this current core they have, maybe supplementing. They feel really good about the pitching side of things. I think it's fair to say, and Eric Neander did acknowledge this, and Kevin Cash as well, that they need to get the offense to be more consistent. Part of that was who they were missing. Brandon Lau was a 39-homer guy who didn't play very much this year, only had 8 homers. So that was a part of it. Their left-handed hitting, which again goes back to Brandon against right-handed pitching, was very down this year. So there's some specific areas to address. Ultimately, will it take a couple of small moves or will it take 1 or 2 big moves? That's always the puzzle with the Rays, and you always give them credit for trying. They're going to look at a lot of things. But I do think, just a gut feeling, there will be at least one significant move this offseason, and we'll see a little bit of a different look when they get to camp next spring.
And they did make the playoffs 4 straight years in a row, so obviously sour taste in a lot of people's mouths right now, but looking forward, what can they build off of going into next year?
Yeah, I mean, that's, ultimately, if you get down to it, they made the playoffs, as you said, 4 straight years, 8 times in 15 years. There's only a handful of teams that kind of met both of those bars, both of those standards. So they have a lot to be proud of. Their philosophy, and Eric Neander talked about it in the Times a couple times this week, is to try to get into the bet that their best chance to win a World Series is to get into the playoffs as many times as they can, rather than try to build up and cycle down. They want to be consistently good. They feel like they've done that. They feel like this run of success can continue. He made a point of mentioning, the extension they signed Tyler Glasnow to that keeps him with the Rays through 2024. I mean, they might be going into next season with the best rotation. Certainly one of the best they've ever had. I never won. It all kind of blends together over 25 seasons, so I never like to come out and say the best, but certainly one of the best with Glasnow, McClanahan, Springs, and Rasmussen at the top 4. They always do a good job assembling a good bullpen. They've got a bunch of key guys returning. So I think their pitching is going to be good for next year. It's going to come down to, like we just said, what can they do hitting-wise? The rules are going to be different next year, no shifts. That should help some of those left-handed hitters. But, as Neander said, it'll also help every other team in the league, too, so is there a negligible benefit? So I think ultimately the Rays should, as we sit here today, should go into 2023 expecting, once again, to compete for a playoff spot, try to get into the tournament, and see if they can just have a little bit longer run after getting bounced in their first round 2 years in a row.
We'll see what lies ahead here in the offseason coming up before we get on into next season. So make sure you guys are keeping up with all of the Rays coverage that we've got for you over on social media at Sports Tampa Bay Times, as well as over at tampabay.com.